In leadership, isn't it? It's always really good to be able to have simple, easy to use tools that actually mean something. Now, what Sarah and I are going to take you through in this episode is what we call our performance culture matrix. This is a 9-grid matrix that we're going to share with you. And don't worry, we are going to give it to you as a downloadable document as well. And what this is it looks at the correlation between performance and culture. And because it's in a grid, a 9-point grid, what this enables you to do is actually to be able to see your team on a page in regard to how do they sit in relation to culture and in relation to performance. So how it works, we're going to take you through the actual what the model looks like, and we're going to also give you some tips about what could you do when you find that you've got team members in certain positions of that grid. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now to take you through the performance culture matrix, which I'm sure you'll absolutely love to bring clarity and ease to your leadership.
So as Kirsten's described, we have got a 9-sector model. And we've got a grid axis, so we have got culture down one side and we've got performance along the other axes. And literally there are the standard lines, and so we end up with 9 squares when we're looking at performance and culture. And so what we're looking to do is, as we move up the axis, we're looking to see how high the performance goes. And as we're moving along the axis, we're looking to see how high the culture fit or alignment is, we should be saying, with those people for their role, for their team, and for the organisation. And so it's a nice, very simple model, which is what we like about it, but it's actually what you do with it and actually what you discover once you've gone and placed your people into those, into the grid, that really brings the model to life. Models are all about what you do with them, not so much the model themselves. And so we're going to talk to a couple of aspects, as Kirsten's already alluded to. So the first one I'm going to talk to, and it's probably the one people want to understand a little bit more about, it's when we find that we've marked somebody and they're actually low on performance and they're low on a cultural alignment as well. So what do we do? Well, we have a conversation. So it doesn't matter where somebody is sitting on our grid. Everything is about the conversation that we're going to be having with them. But actually what we're really trying to understand with somebody like this is, do they even want to be here? Is this the right environment for them? What's going on for them where we're not helping them achieve the performance that we'd like to see them to be achieving? Why is it that their performance isn't sitting within even meeting expectations? It's sitting below that. And what's going on with our cultural alignment? What's happening for that person that we are seeing from a behaviour perspective that we feel there isn't an alignment with what's determined by the company in terms of that what our values and our behaviours and our belief system is going to look like. So having those really strong detection, if we look back to one of our previous episodes, conversations, and a really neat tip, particularly when you've got somebody at that lower end of the scale, both on the culture and performance fit, is to go through the 5 whys. And again, we've talked about that in a previous episode, but that 5 whys technique really is about discovery, and it's about that active listening and actually getting to the heart of what's happening for the person and not accepting what's happening at the surface. So those first responses are probably just responses or even reactions. That second one, maybe we're getting somewhere, but it's those 3rd, 4th and 5th layers where you're really going to be getting to the heart of what's going on for that person. And once you know that, then you'll have a better understanding of what the next steps are going to look like. And of course, for some people, that role in the business might simply not be right for them, and that's okay. But how do we help you with those next steps? If everything is okay, then how do we help you change and perform better? What are the things that you need from us to enable you to be moving in this grid and in this model? So another one I want to look at is somebody who sits right smack bang in the middle of the model, because we've got a 9 grid, so somebody somewhere is going to sit smack bang in the middle of that grid. And there's a misconception when we don't have those high performers and high cultural alignments that actually we've got to get in, we've got to do something, we've got lots of things to fix. And I'd actually just like you to pause for a moment there, because Actually, if somebody is meeting performance standards, that's fantastic. We so often forget that when people are meeting performance, that's incredibly powerful in itself. And not everybody is a high performer. Not everybody has significant career aspirations. But if we do have somebody sitting in that middle road from a cultural alignment perspective, then we want to be having an incredibly encouraging conversation with them about how do we help move you further? What is it that's going on for you? We can create a better alignment with who we are as a business and how you fit in so that you feel better and we're seeing the behaviors that are aligning with what our expectations look like.
And like all matrices and models and tools as a leader, there's some that you would actually show and work through with somebody, and there's ones that you would actually just utilize for your eyes only. And this is one of them. You're not going to sit down with the matrix and stick the person on and they can see where they sit compared to everyone else. That's not what this is about. This tool is about giving you the insights from which you can lead differently, from which you can then choose which conversations are actually required, and to enable you guessed it, to adapt your approach to get the best out of the other person. I remember doing a workshop many years ago, and I was absolutely horrified, and it's not often that I get lost for words. And I had a room full of people. I had about 30 people in the room, and there was this one guy in the room, and we were working through a particular exercise, and he stood up and he said, you know what? I'm actually the best out of all this team. Technically, this company would never get rid of me. And actually, I know quite often that I'm a jerk to work with, but I don't really care because the company's not going to get rid of me because I'm really good at my job. Now, I always love to challenge it, and I did challenge it, and I did bring it up with leadership afterwards, because there is quite a big difference between being technically competent at your craft and actually fulfilling other aspects of your role, which is around the culture and the team alignment and the part that you play in that. And we so often think that just because people are high performers, that we'll put all the rest under the carpet. Our warning to you is please don't do that. You really need to address those as and where required. So in his particular case, he was a high performer, however, low on the cultural alignment. So the two that I would like to take you through are high performer and high culture. Now, when you've got somebody that's high in both, chances are they're going to be a role model, they're going to be hungry to learn more. But don't always just assume, always come back to having that conversation. So chances are, though, the conversation for this particular person is going to center around their growth and their development and their next challenge. But always ask the question. So we always say, ask the question, listen, and then continue with your conversation. The second type of person I'd like to work with in this regard is high culture still, but this time is a low performer. Now, in this particular case, chances are what you're saying is they're the life and soul of the party. They're center to the culture. However, their actual deliveries or deliverables on their role isn't quite cutting it. So this is where our future forward conversations really come into play, because this conversation, when you sit down with this person, is acknowledging the amazing part that they play as, within the culture and within the team, but it's also about making sure that they're very clear and you're very clear on the expectations of the role, and having those questions, like Sarah mentioned, asking the whys, finding out why they feel that they are getting the results in their role that aren't actually meeting those expectations. And it's really amazing when you start to have these conversations, what you'll learn about the other person, but it's also giving them that courtesy and that respect to be able to look and learn new behaviours that they can then elevate their performance.
And as Kirsten said before, like with any model, it's actually the application and the use of it that's just as important. Models are only as good as how we actually use them in our workplaces. And so when you're looking at not just this model, but anything you're using in the workplace, but particularly with a model where you're using it at a leadership or a management level, make sure there's consensus on how it's used. Because that's really important, because what we're going to achieve when we do that is we're going to see that there's fairness and then there's consistency in the application of that model. So for example, none of us have teams of really high performers and full high cultural alignments. We do often have people in different places because we have different situations and events taking place in our workspace all of the time. So making sure we've got that consistency is also just as important as using the model itself. And as Kirsten said, this is going to be available for you to download and use at the end of this video. And just lastly, we'd just like to round off this leadership series with a quick recap. We've talked to you about authentic leadership. We've rolled through what you stand for, building that amazing reputation and really owning your personal brand. We've talked you through the power of leading differently, and we rounded all of that off with the performance culture model. So we hope you enjoyed this 5-part series around leadership, and we can't wait to bring you the next series.